Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark.
And I'm Randy.
Today we're taking a look at Blackstone Castle.
Blackstone Castle is brought to you by Dragon Phoenix Games. It supports 2 to 4 players, ages 10 and up, and each game takes between 50 and 90 minutes to play.
Great, well let's go see who can best manipulate the vassals on the board to carry out the king's political objectives. Okay, so here's what a typical setup is going to look like, and what's neat here is that the board is set up to look and actually behave like a slide puzzle, right? Which is pretty neat. So what you're gonna do is manipulating these vassals in order to carry out objectives on your cards. And these vassal cards all have a faction and a role associated with them, and they're double-sided. The black stone is a grid that you create, and that's consistent throughout. However, these vassals are random every game. And then you have your wizard tokens and your knight tokens. These are the currency of the realm, so to say. And then you have your castle tokens, and then you have your different families of the court.
After setting up the board, each player is given a set of starting cards called household cards. These provide a foundation for 4 of the 5 different types of cards you will be bringing into your tableau. We're going to go from right to left here because as we move left, they have a little bit more significance. The first type of card is a wizard card. Now, each of these cards have a set of actions you can take if you spend tokens, and we'll talk about those in a moment. The next type of card is a knight card. So in the same way, the number of wizard cards might represent the amount of magic power your kingdom has at its disposal. The knight cards represent the number of knights or the amount of military power. The third type of card is the king card, and it's very important because the number of king cards you have will limit the amount of benefit you get from your wizard and knight cards. So basically you don't want more magic power or more military power than your king has reputation or power in himself. And then the last card that you get as a starting card is the Order of Event card. Now,
the neat thing about sort of event cards, right, is that it truly outlines your turn. I mean, it's all right here. You can really just play the game from your tableau.
Yeah, basically. It's a fairly straightforward set of instructions there for the game itself. And this provides a foundation for cards that are called ploy cards. Now, unlike the rest of them, they don't have a symbol of a knight or a wizard or a king. They have a symbol of a chess piece, the queen chess piece. And so these aren't actually called queen cards. They're called ploy cards. And we'll talk about these in more detail later because they're very powerful.
Yes.
The last type of card each player is given is a family card. Now, you don't have to distribute these one to each player. You can give them 2 and let them choose between them. But ultimately, these cards give each player a major power and a minor power that they can have powers that are different from the other players.
Very asymmetrical. I mean, it really changes how you play based on which family you have.
It does, and since there are more family cards than there are players, this gives you a chance to mix and match different family powers in future games and get some additional replayability. To go along with the family card, you will be given 2 what they call Intrigue tokens with a crest that matches your family card. And we'll talk about these in a moment. What these, though, allow you to do is they allow you to take advantage of other players' movements in the future to give yourself some benefits.
Do you love a good intrigue?
That's right.
And then finally, everyone is dealt 2 guild cards. Now, these guild cards really are like mission cards. And these are cards that once you complete the mission, you're going to be putting into your tableau.
That's right.
Now, the way these work is that you're looking for faction and role, just like the vassals, out into this grid. And again, it's like a slide puzzle. You're going to be manipulating the slide puzzle, either moving vassals around into rows and columns. You'll be flipping vassals, potentially to get the right combination that you need. Right. And some of your missions will have rows and columns that have to be met, or just a single row or just a single column. So there's a lot of variance in these guild cards.
Yeah, if you look at the guild card itself, you'll see in the upper left the point value of that card, the type of card that we discussed before, wizard, knight, king, or ploy card.
Right.
You'll see in the upper right, well, that's not going to be a cost for additional cards of that type, and we'll get back to that in a moment. But on the lower left and lower right, you'll see the requirements that you have to match in order to bring this card into your tableau. And each of the requirements have either a row and or column in the black letters there. And since and they're designated not by A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3. They're designated by the letters of Blackstone. And since neither those letters don't overlap between rows and columns, what you'll see here is just like, for example, B and N. You'll see a B as a column, and you'll see an N as a row. And the requirement is that you find a vassal in that location, that row and column intersection, that has this faction and this particular role. When you see this kind of rainbow hue for either the faction or the role, that means it's a wild card. Anything can match. Now over on the right side, there's a second requirement. You have to match both of these in order for you to bring this into your tableau. And for the second requirement, unless you're playing the advanced game, it's a much easier one because they only have a single row or a single column that you have to they have to find a matching vassal in. And again, it's got a faction and a role that you have to match. If you're playing on the more hardcore version of the game, you'll be constrained also by this additional row and column.
All right, let's take a look at a sample turn. The first thing you're going to do in your turn is recall your Intrigue agents. And really, all this means is you're going to pull your tokens from the board. And we'll take a closer look at what these agents do. And these will be agents that you have played in your previous turn. Secondly, you're going to rally your knights and your wizards. Now, you're going to get tokens based on however many wizards and knights you have. These are really the currency of the realm.
Right.
And this is what you'll spend to do your actions. However, you are limited by however many kings that you have in your tableau. So even if you have 20 wizards, you're only going to get 2 wizard tokens because you're limited by kings.
Well, if you only have 2 kings.
Yeah,
right.
If you only have 2 kings.
Now,
but you're not going to have coin, so to say, to spend on actions if you don't increase your kings as well.
Right, and so this controls the amount of income you're getting in terms of these tokens.
Absolutely.
Now,
definitely some nice engine building there.
Right, you can have some leftover wizard tokens. Well, let's say you have 3 wizards out there, and that includes your starting household card because those count as well. And you only have 2 kings. And what happens is when it's time to collect tokens during this second step of the game, what will happen is they'll say, and let's say I had 2 left over from last time. I didn't use them. So right now I've got 2. Comes to the second step of the game. I have 2 kings out there. So that means of the 3 wizards, I can only get 2 wizard tokens additional. In this, instead of the 3. So if I want to get 3 each turn, I need to get another king. But when I get those 2, I have a total of 4. The king doesn't check those. We don't check the limits until the end of
till the end, which is a good thing.
So this is an opportunity for you to get those, spend those during your turn, and make sure you don't waste any before your turn ends.
Now, the next thing you're going to do in your turn is manipulate the vassals or configure the board in ways that will help you complete your task or your mission. And you have task cards that we showed you before, the guild cards. The thing about these cards is that based on which type you get, they increase in difficulty, but they also increase in reward. Now, the guild cards are chock full of knights and wizards. Right. But your power cards, again, a little harder to achieve out here on the board, but they have more kings.
Right.
And then you have machination cards. And these cards are more ploy-driven. And they just are like big rewards at the end of the game.
Right. So basically you've got the 3 types of task cards, guild, power, and machination cards. And they have different roles that populate those. They get harder because there are fewer and fewer wild cards, and there are fewer requirements that require only a row or a column. What you're seeing more and more as you get from guild through power to machinations is they'll have both a requirement for a row and a column.
With specifics.
With specifics and no wild cards. So if you've gotten enough kings and knights and wizards and you're fine with those and we just want to go for point cards, then you go all the way to the machination cards.
Now, you're going to be spending tokens in order to perform actions in order to manipulate these vassals so you can achieve those task cards. And you have wizard tokens and you have knight tokens. So, the wizards have very specific actions they can perform, and they're very different than what the knights do. So, first off, the wizard, you spend a token, you can swap a vassal. So basically adjacent vassals, you can move them around on the grid. Secondly, you can transform a vassal. Now this is pretty slick because all these vassals are double-sided. And you can see in the corner what's on the backside. So you might need that particular faction and role. So you can spend a token from the wizard in order to flip the card over and transform it to its other side. Lastly, you can spend a token in order to buy another task card of your choice.
You can also spend knight tokens to perform one of the 4 knight actions. The first knight action is to slide a vassal card 1 space adjacent, north, south, east, or west. You can't move it diagonally. The second thing you can do is to guard one of these vassal cards. Now what that means is that let's say you have a task card that matches one of the vassal cards, but you can't get the other one to match this
Right.
turn. What you can do is you can put down a knight token there and basically guard it from further manipulation. Unfortunately, other players can spend their knight tokens as well to unguard a card so that they can then manipulate it as they wish. But then again, that applies to you as well. You can spend a knight token to unguard other players' guarded cards. The last type of knight action is to retain a vassal card. And you're saying, well, why would I retain this card and put it in my tableau when I need this in order to complete a task card? The cards have to match out here. Here's the reason, is that as I mentioned earlier, in the upper right, there is what is an additional charge for future cards. In addition, so let's say I already had this in my tableau, and I want to bring this or complete this task card. Not only do I have to meet these two requirements down here, but all cards beneath it on my foundation have an additional cost to me of discarding a retained card that matches the faction and role shown in the upper right of the card. So if I want to put this card down in my tableau, and this is going to be beneath it, I have to meet these two requirements and have a retained vassal in my tableau that matches this role and faction.
And the crazy thing is that it's cumulative.
It is. So if this is my stack of knights right now, and I want to get a fourth card in this tableau, then I'm going to have to discard vassals that I've retained that match both of these symbols. So it gets more and more challenging as you go on. The next step in the game is to replace any vassals that have been removed from the board. So let's say that you have performed a match and completed a task. This particular one says I need a vassal that has any faction but has the role of a captain someplace in the O row. And sure enough, I do right here. I'll take one of these completion tokens, otherwise known as castle tokens, because they have a picture of a castle on them, and I'll put it on the first matching requirement. And then the second requirement is that someplace in column A, I need a vassal with a faction of a castle, and it can have any role at all. And sure enough, I do. Yay, I'm very happy about that. So in order to complete this, what I will do is I will put this into my tableau, and then I will remove these two cards from the board, leaving those castle tokens in place so I know where they're at. And these go to the discard pile. I then replace those two cards, those two vassals, from the deck in the corner that I have selected as my deck in the beginning. Each player will choose one of the corner decks to refill in case of completing a task. So in this case, I take the top two and just put them in place of those tokens. And that's the way I would replace cards in the case of a completed task. Now, a strategic element of this game is if I retain a vassal, if I spend a knight token and actually took this and put it in my tableau, and I would put a token there as well, I can choose any of the four corner decks to replace it from. So if I'm looking around here and saying, I cannot get what I need in this corner, and I really don't need this card, but I'll retain it and take a card from the corner I need it to be and place it there so I'm set up for next turn.
It's a very nice strategic move, which we ran into the other night.
Yeah.
And just really manipulating the board to your best outcome.
Absolutely.
Next on your turn, you have the option of assigning Intrigue tokens. These are the tokens with your family crest on them, and you're going to be assigning them to the wizards, kings, or knights in your tableau. Now, you can only do this if you've completed a task. But you are looking to match symbols. You're looking to match either both the faction and the role from the tableau to the vassals out on the board. But why would you do this? Because you're hoping that someone else will manipulate that card in some way, because you get rewards if they do. It's intrigue, right? So you're looking to either get more tokens or more task cards. And depending on if you match one or both will determine what you get.
Right, and so basically you're laying a trap, and if they manipulate a card that you've designated as with your Intrigue token, you'll get these rewards. Now you have the option, in addition to placing the Intrigue token locally in your tableau on a face-up, knight, king, or wizard, you can place it on one of your face-down cards. Now you still want to make certain that one or both symbols match with the one you put out there, but if the card that you've designated with your Intrigue token on the board is used by one of your opponents to make a match for them, and you've designated a face down card in your tableau with your other intrigue token, what happens is you get to put this into your own tableau as long as you can pay the upgrade
cost,
the extra cost. Now the reason this is key is we talked about how hard machination cards can be. So you can look at this and say, I'm not going to be able to make this in any real, there's no chance of me making this. So I'm going to put my intrigue token on here. And I know that Mark, in order to get that additional wizard or additional knight, he's going to have a vassal that looks like this because it's already in his tableau, and that's the additional cost for him putting like the 4th knight there.
Right.
So I'll put this here, and if he chooses to take that, to make that task completion, then voila, I'm set for this. Now, he might look over here and say, oh my gosh, Randy's got his intrigue token on a machination card. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to keep turning cards over from here until I find what I need.
Next.
So, yeah, exactly. So there's this intrigue, the intrigue tokens actually provide another interesting dimension to the game.
It really does. Then finally on your turn, you move to king limits. So based on however many kings you have in your tableau will dictate however many tokens you get to hold on to, because maybe you didn't spend them all on your turn, right? So if you didn't spend them all and you're trying to retain some for next turn for a big power move, then you're limited by however many kings you have. And also, you're limited to how many cards you can retain in your tableau, and you're limited to how many cards you can hold in your hand.
Right, so if you have 3 kings, basically you can keep up to 3 knight tokens, 3 wizard tokens, you can have up to 3 retained vassals, and you can have up to 3 task cards in your hand. Now, at this point in time, you also check your point total.
Right.
And if anyone has reached 21 points, or if you've reached 21 points, you trigger the end of the game. Now, this is key. If you have 3 kings and you have 4 knight cards here, only the points from 3 of those knight cards count. Now, of course, you're going to choose the ones that are highest. But if you think, oh, yeah, I've got 21, and somebody can say, no, you've got 4 knight cards, but that 2 doesn't count.
Right.
So you only have 19. So keep that in mind, that as you're moving forward, no matter how many wizard cards or knight cards you have, you can only count the points for as many kings as you have.
Hey folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. Now that said, this really is a super puzzly game, and there's a lot of back and forth. The pieces are constantly moving, disrupting your plans throughout. So there's some neat, if you like puzzle type games, this definitely has that.
And the deluxe version has a couple of additional types of vassal cards. There's the assassin and the saboteur. Now, the assassins can be moved, but they cannot be retained, so you can't get them out of the way. Unfortunately, you can. The reverse is true with the saboteur.
Yeah.
You can retain a saboteur, but when you do, basically everything gets blown up.
Yeah.
And that's a good way of clearing. If you find out that none of these are useful to you and a saboteur card comes out,
over.
yeah, that's a good way of basically clearing the board and getting another chance to meet some of your tasks.
Indeed. All right, so folks, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they would appreciate your support.
Absolutely.
I think that's it from us.
Yep.
And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.